Welcome, everyone. We're thrilled that you've taken your time today to join us as we, as IIBA, contribute to the celebration of women internationally. IIBA has historically and continues to recognize and empower women by providing opportunities for them to grow their career in business analysis. We believe that all business analysts have a responsibility to practice equality. And as BAs, we have a unique opportunity in our encounters with customers and stakeholders and teams. We can uniquely accelerate that equality and those opportunities. So in today's webinar, we're recognizing International Women's Day 2020, which is actually this coming Sunday. Really cool timing in that we can celebrate it the week before, the day of, and even the week after. But as you think about the theme for this year of each for equal and what we can do to help this be an equal world and an enabled world. And we can contribute to that uniquely through our work in business analysis. In today's Women in Business Analysis webinar, we're going to hear about our panelists' real-life challenges and the successes that they've experienced and faced in their careers and how they've overcome obstacles to achieve their current success as women working in business analysis. These are some of our pioneers. We'll dig a little deeper to learn what has shaped their thinking, ways they've advocated for themselves and other women, and questions and challenges they face. I'm Jody Kane, and when I think about the theme this year for International Women's Day and how exciting it is that we take the time out to celebrate women internationally, there are three words that come to mind for me first. Safety. There's always an importance of establishing safety in our groups and in the people that we work with. And when we do that, it levels the playing field and awareness that we're always paying attention and being aware of places or things that are going on around us where equality might not be in place or where somebody is not having a good experience, and courage. Equality requires a lot of courage to speak up, to stand up for ourselves and for others. So I'd like to introduce our panelists. Reydan, could you share with us something that's special about you or meaningful to you about women's equality?
Yes, sure. Hi, everyone. I just first want to celebrate everyone's International Women's Day. And I believe that empowerment of women will enable a collectively intelligent society. And this will be a key for us to solve the major problems of today. We can say everything like climate change or poverty or anything we can think of. And therefore, I think we need to proactively find ways to achieve the gender equality.
Very good. Thank you so much for sharing that, Reydan. And Barbara, how about you? Welcome.
Thanks, Jody, and hello to everyone. Barbara Carkenord. I'm so happy to be here with the panelists and with all of you today. As I thought about the theme of International Women's Day, I was reminded of one of my favorite quotes, and this comes from Brian Stevenson. And he is related to the Equal Justice Initiative. It's the opposite of poverty is not wealth. The opposite of poverty is justice. And so when we talk about not necessarily everyone being equal, but that us all having an equal opportunity to achieve whatever we can in our lives.
Very nice. Thank you very much, Barbara. And Laura, welcome to you also.
I've got to unmute there. I was protecting you guys from my really loud laugh. I'll try to be careful with that. Thank you, Jody, for the introduction. I am humbled and honored to be a part of this panel. For me, I would mirror a lot of what Barbara said, is that for me, it's a lot less about direct equality. If you would see my husband, you would recognize we are definitely not equal. But it's about fairness. It's about justice. It's about, I actually appreciate the differences between us and prefer to leverage those differences. I'm more about the equality of opportunity, right? Equality for equality, equal situation, equal capabilities, equal effort, deserve equal consideration, equal, things like that. So for me, it's more about the fairness and justice. I very much can relate to what Barbara said.
Very nice. Thank you, Laura. Thanks so much for sharing, all of you. So we're going to get started. If you have questions throughout the webinar, please enter them into the question box and we'll be monitoring that, and then we'll share them with the panelists during our Q&A portion of the webinar. Any questions that we're not able to get to today will be answered in upcoming blogs that will be posted on IIBA's Analyst Canalist blog spot. And then also keep an eye out for polls that are going to pop up during the webinar. We'd like to hear your responses and your experience. So let's get started. Laura, can you tell us what has been the biggest struggle and triumph you've experienced as a woman working in business analysis?
You bet. What we represent with this profession is change. Change is scary, right? And so people often respond to that with fear and direct it towards you. So I think my biggest challenge hasn't been, there's been the sexual harassment, there's been the direct discrimination telling me that my being a smart woman is a problem. Very honest, direct comments made to me in that manner. But those actually weren't the biggest challenge I had. The biggest challenge was me. The biggest challenge was fear within myself. It was my own insecurities, and I'm still insecure. Anyone that knows me at all knows I'm very insecure still. My biggest challenge was overcoming those fears and overcoming those insecurities and moving on in spite of them, and having the courage. Your comment earlier, Jody, about courage, huge for me. It's about having the courage to love myself, appreciate myself, and stand up for myself. And, expect of others the same respect, appreciation, things like that. The fairness that I give them, expect that in return. And it was hard for me because I always thought, how should I change me to survive this? And I'm kind of cool. So there are things that I always want to improve, but at the core of who I am, my intelligence, my honesty, my humility, and my care for when I'm communicating with people, all of those things are good things and they shouldn't change. So for me, it was more about my biggest struggle was my insecurities, and my largest triumph has been my courage to overcome them.
Great. Laura, thank you so much for sharing from your heart, because insecurities are such a challenge and fears, and often we don't even realize that we are not acting out of courage because of fear that's there and those insecurities to speak up. And I really appreciate you sharing from your heart like that.
Thank you.
You're all accomplished in the field of business analysis, and you've all had a range of experiences in your careers. Barbara, can you tell us how you chose business analysis as your career?
Sure, Jody, I would love to. I obviously didn't know that there was such a thing as a business analysis career when I was in college. And I chose to go into computer science and started out as a software developer. I was fortunate enough to work for a large company, General Motors, outside of Detroit, and got very good training and was able to move up sort of in the career path at the time, become a programmer analyst and a systems analyst, and then a project manager. And what I discovered through that time period, although I did like coding, what I really enjoyed was going out to the plants and talking with the people that were actually making the cars and trucks, and trying to figure out how technology could make their jobs better, easier, more efficient, more cost effective. And so it was funny because I was at one point transferred to a different group within General Motors, and I became more of a coder. And I really missed having those interactions with the business people. And that's when I discovered, although I didn't know what it was called, that I really wanted to do analysis. I really wanted to help people use technology in a better way. And once I figured that out, project management wasn't as much fun for me. And and I really got involved with more people that understood analysis and started to try to help carve out a career space for that, even though I didn't know that's what I was doing at the time.
Wow, that's a great story. And, you know, it's interesting because I come from a time as well where business analysis was not so popular or not known about, and there definitely wasn't any kind of college degree or college education for it. And it always makes me think that there's something that led us to it. It's just something in our nature. And I think often when I meet business analysts, we talk about this just way of being that we have that led us to be great business analysts. And that's a really cool story. I would have loved the experience of doing it in a manufacturing environment myself. Oh, wrong direction. So just sharing a little bit of information. In business analysis, we've got this growing field, and there's a lot of opportunity out there right now. We can see that in the past 2 years, looking at IIBA's salary survey statistics, we see that globally, the ratio of women and men working in business analysis is tracking around 50% and for women. And we can also see that women, the salary for women is actually 2% higher than men's salary. And that's a different trend than a lot of career paths are seeing, and kind of creates some, you know, the business analyst in me wants to understand why and what contributes to that. But it's really a strong career option for women. So Reydan, what are some of the opportunities for women in business analysis who want to be a pioneer in their field?
Yes, so it's a really good question to see the opportunities in the field actually. So I just checked the report, which is Global Gender Gap Report before the panel, and it says that for this year's there is the women's underrepresentation in some emerging roles like cybersecurity, cloud computing, data analytics, artificial intelligence, we can say. So from taking a look at this report and also taking these statistics from the presentation, we can say that cybersecurity, agile, DevOps, data analytics, these fields can be good opportunities for the women who wants to be pioneer in these fields, in their fields. Also, maybe product ownership, business architecture can be some fields that we need to focus more.
Very good, thank you. Yeah, it's a growing field. We had our cybersecurity webinar a few weeks ago and had a great response to that. And so it's definitely a great field for us to move towards in our business analysis careers. Lora, in your experience, what have you found to be the most effective strategies for working and developing diverse teams?
So I can very much relate to that. I have some sessions that I actually speak publicly about. You know, I've got some podcasts about where do you place business analysts? How do you build those teams? Things like that. I think diversity is extremely important, both in the skill sets and personalities that you have on your team, as well as their experience, right? So when I go looking for a new opportunity, or when a new opportunity comes to find me, right? Someone finds me and says, hey, we want you to join our team, but we're really concerned because you seem to have an average tenure of 3 years. And I'm like, well, so that means I've got a very diverse background. I've been exposed to multiple cultures, multiple industries, multiple functional areas of organizations, which means I'm going to be able to bring a significant objectivity to your organization. And with objectivity comes things like innovation. It comes with the elegant ideas and opportunities and things like that. So I think that it's important to realize that when you're trying to build a diverse team, we have our own biases and assumptions that we have built over time because of our experiences and our relationships. And it's important that we maintain awareness of that so we can set that aside. Now, that doesn't mean that I choose someone specifically because they're different, but I do hope to find that. I hope to find the individual with the right skill set that brings diversity to our group, because with that comes much better opportunities for collaboration and things. So I don't believe in siloing my team. I don't believe in, I'm aware of groupthink. I try to avoid the groupthink. So I try to find heterogeneous individuals that will work together. And it's all about ensuring that you build a safe environment for those diverse individuals to function within and work together and grow and be honest with one another. And I also don't tend to specialize my team because I like the opportunities of individuals having a little bit of experience in different functional areas with different solutions, because I found that that diversity mixed with the individual's personal diversity and that mix of the team gives much better opportunities for, man, really cool change. Really cool change can happen when you do that. Now, that's more work for the leader. It is harder to lead that way, but it's more about the people that are enabling change than it is about what's hard or easy for me as the leader, right? So, yeah, I hope that answers.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. I appreciate you sharing that. And, you know, there's an awareness involved there that when we understand, you know, our differences and start to celebrate those, just like us celebrating International Women's Day today, you know, it just brings a whole different culture to our teams. And like with the innovative things that you mentioned, you know, when we start celebrating that diversity and having that awareness and creating that safety, it just opens things to happen so much more powerfully. And
yes.
I really appreciate your experience. So I think we had a poll question there that popped up where we're really curious about how people feel about diversity in their organizations. So I'm hoping if you didn't see the poll yet that you'll take a look at it and pop out there and share your responses with us. Barbara, would you say that throughout your career there have been cases where you wished you had the support of male advocates and other experiences where you did have the support of male advocates that made a difference? Do you feel like there's experiences where you really could have used some support, and how have those male advocates might have helped you to improve those situations or make the environment more inclusive for everyone?
That's a great question, Jody. And as I mentioned, I started my career in manufacturing. And so as you can imagine, and this was quite a number of years ago, it was pretty much a male dominated industry. And even in a couple organizations that I worked after that, there were some tough times where, you know, not only did maybe you not get support, but you actually had people sort of working against you. You know, unfortunately, I remember a couple times where I felt like there was a man who was threatened by me coming in and maybe, you know, actually consciously was trying to sabotage me. So that's a little depressing. The good news is that over the years, I really have seen a lot of change. And I see we have a poll about, have you had the support of male advocates? So it'll be interesting to see what our attendees answer. But recently, I feel like I've had very good advocates, both male and female. So people who are willing to tell others that I am competent and that I will help them and give me recommendations and references. And it is important. I think we all need advocates of any gender. And the more that I think we advocate for other people and people see that we are willing to share other people's success, then they are often willing to share our success. And I also would like to say in this topic, you know, one of the big changes that I think we continue to see and I keep supporting is women have to support other women.
Thank you.
I've seen some situations where, you know, we've had women sort of competing with each other because we always felt like there weren't going to be a lot of women at the top, so you had to be the one who won. I hope that's continuing to change, and I've worked really hard to always support women in teams and in organizations where I've worked, because I think that's the way that we can continue to show our value, is to not sabotage each other.
Barbara, that is such a great point. I think, you know, the male advocates are so important to us, but boy, I don't know about everyone on the call, but I have times where you walk into a room and right away all the women are looking at each other, and you can tell that every woman in that meeting is threatened by the other women. And, you know, sometimes just being the first person to smile and be welcoming, or you can just change the tone of that meeting just like that. And
absolutely, absolutely right.
Yeah, because as women, we need to support each other and be those advocates. And I really appreciate you bringing up that point as well. But I can't imagine when you started your career what it must have been like in a manufacturing plant, and you know what you had to forge, and took a lot of courage. All right, so we had another poll question pop up there, and I think hopefully after we get through our questions, we'll be able to share the poll results. So I'm going to keep moving though.
Actually, Jody, you may not be able to see them, but we are seeing the results. It's 79% of people said yes, they've had male advocates in their careers, which is great.
Okay. Oh, great, nice. Thanks for sharing that, Barbara, because no, I can't see that on my side. Very good. Okay, Reydan, could you describe 3 characteristics about yourself that you believe led to your success in business analysis?
Sure, I can. So I have practiced business analysis for years actually, and the first characteristic or skill that I can say that I have just developed is my communication skills, I can say. So I always try to be a good listener, and most of the times a good facilitator for all the meetings and all the sessions we have with the business stakeholders or with the team. So during that journey, I just focused to build empathy with all the parties that I just interact. So I think it helped me so much. So most of the time they also understand what I stand for and what I try to do. And I just had that support from my environment, all the stakeholders that I have interacted on my way. So secondly, I can say that I try to be open always to learning. So for the technical stuff and functional stuff, I just didn't give up to learn new things. And this also helped me so much to understand all the parties that I'm interacting. So you know that there are some security guys, the infrastructure guys. I'm working in IT industry currently. So we have the development team, but there are some business parties that do not understand most of the time any technical stuff. So try to develop my both sides, both functional and technical. So it helped me so much also. And throughout my career, my first position was much more technical than today. And also I just learned from there to speak the language of everybody around me. And thirdly, maybe it's a cliche, but I just try to focus on the details, but both at the same time, so aim to try to see the big picture, like the direction of the organization or the objectives of the projects, the needs of the business. So I just try to mix them in one pot and try to reflect these to the work that I'm trying to complete actually.
Nice. So Reydan, that last comment that you said about mixing them in the pot, right away, BA soup popped into my head. And, you know, I love the point that when you were saying about empathy, because I can remember a time for myself where we were doing empathy mapping and really getting to know the customers and the stakeholders. And all of a sudden it hit me that the challenges that we were having within our team, we didn't have empathy for each other. And we kind of actually did some exercises then after we had finished that with our stakeholders and customers, and we did some internal things with the team to gain empathy for each other. And it was an amazing experience. And when you were talking about learning, you know, for me personally, when I first learned about IIBA, the CBAP wasn't even available yet, and it was in the very beginning, and it was so exciting to have a place like IIBA to go to keep learning, to keep hearing about new things, to keep, you know, getting connections to different people, and that continuous learning, because we are definitely in a career that new things are popping up all the time, and sometimes it's hard to keep up with them. And to be able to have a place to go to do that is really important to me. Thank you.
So
oh yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
Yes, just a quick addition to that. So when we take a look at the design thinking, the first step is to empathize, to understand the needs of your stakeholders, anyone, the customer, the end user, and the stakeholders, anyone who you are interacting. So yes, building empathy is so important.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you. So we hear a lot these days about mentors, and Laura, could I ask you what mentor has positively impacted or inspired you and what's a lesson that they taught you?
So I think that this is an interesting question for me, because having that be singular is difficult for me. I have individuals who have impacted my decisioning and my confidence and things like that all along the way, and the names and the faces change over time. And each one of them has impacted me in a way that is inspirational, but individually it's not as big as the big picture. So I mean, using Reydan's comment, at the risk of sounding cliche, my mother was my first inspiration, where she told me that you're special, you're you can be anything you want to be, and don't let anyone make you be anyone that you're not, right? Because you're pretty awesome. And she apparently it worked, kind of, because I know me now. But I think it took, honestly, it was watching her passing process that just solidified it for me. And then my husband is an unbelievable lifter and mentor for me. I come home and I bring things to him, and he reminds me how amazing I am when I'm being held down in other areas of my professional career. Professionally, my very first IT boss, I wasn't even, my husband talked me into going into it, to speak to Barbara's comment, software development. Now, what I did take out of that, I got a 4 and learned I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. But my first IT boss that recognized me, I hadn't taken any school or anything at that point. I was just underwriting medical equipment for insurance coverage. And he pulled me into IT, and he said, you're going to be a CIO one day. And he lifted me up constantly, and he was very good at, his culture is very different. He was not from this country, and he was very direct and honest while being very supportive and uplifting. And then later in my career, when I was having some pretty bumpy, bruisey, a spot in my career that had me greatly questioning myself, I had a mentor who is an inspirational author, and he said, yeah, you're not perfect, but I tell you what, in this situation, you're not what needs fixing. It's those around you that need fixing, because they're insecure and you have no ability to impact their insecurity. That's all them. They own that.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be less smart. You shouldn't be less passionate. You shouldn't be less honest, right? Because I'm careful with my honesty. So those people throughout my career have helped me be okay with me, and they have helped me have the courage and confidence to overcome the challenge of feeling not good enough, that imposter syndrome. They helped eliminate that for me at times. I mean, it still creeps in, but it's just been various along the way. Honestly, my biggest mentors have had nothing to do. They haven't mentored me in tech. It hasn't been about technology. It's been about me and who I am, and self-belief and self-love and confidence and courage to take risks. So not one person, man. It's everyone along the way.
Good for you, Laura. Thanks for sharing that. And, you know, for our webinar attendees and those who are listening, I encourage you to take a few minutes every now and then and think about the people, like how Laura talked about multiple people have influenced her throughout her career and encouraged her. And, you know, sometimes we forget those things that people have given us guidance on or said to us positively to lift us up. And, you know, I encourage you to take a few moments every now and then and sit down and think about those things and reach down to that stuff when you're having challenges or some weak moments. But I appreciate what you shared with us, Laura. So rituals are something that we hear a lot about these days, and definitely we know that they can be very powerful. So Reydan, how about if could you share with us a daily or weekly ritual that contributes to your ongoing success?
Yes, sure, I can share. So first of all, for every day, every night, all the time, I just try to stay positive. This is my first ritual, I can say. But for the stuff that I do, I can say that I just try to prepare some to-do lists, and I just prioritize them like a business analyst and try to focus which one I just go first and try to update them all the time. And daily, I can say that I just set my expectation from the day and try to achieve this. But in the evening also, I just try to think that what portion I just achieved and how can I improve myself on this way. And also I try to do this weekly. And most of the time I just try to allocate some time for my learning, professional learning, and I try to allocate at least 30 minutes a day for this. And also I just said I just try to stay positive, and for this I socialize with friends from job or from school, anywhere, and also with my family. And for the celebration of myself as a person, I just try to sometimes take a day off when I'm so exhausted, or write notes to myself or people I care around. And the best thing I do is I think I just go camping. Yes, if there are so tough times recently, then I maybe for one day or for a weekend, I just prefer to go camp and try to embrace nature, and it gives us the happiness that I need most of the time, I can say.
Nice. So Reydan, that's something that you and I share in common. I definitely take times out to be in nature, and I love camping a lot, but I love some of the other points that you made too. And, you know, it sounds like you have a diverse way of a variety of different things that you do, which is so important to have not just that one thing. And, you know, it's another area that if we find ourselves in like constant chaos or something, sometimes it's just time to take some time to, you know, take a breather or take a walk, or, you know, a lot of people even talk about how on their lunch break they go outside and take a walk, and how those little daily or weekly rituals can help you to stay centered and can help your mind to be so much more open and nurtured. So
Jody,
I can see the poll results. Do you want to share with us?
Jody, this is Barb. Yeah, we can see, do you celebrate yourself as a person on a regular basis? Only 20% of the people said yes, 55% said sometimes, and 25% said no. So we would encourage you all to do that. Jody, I just want to make one more comment on that topic, and that is about the personality traits of introversion and extroversion. I always highly recommend the book by Susan Cain called Quiet, How Introverts Survive in a World That Can't Stop Talking, because I feel like a lot of business analysts are introverts. We are deep thinkers, and a lot of the psychological and neurological studies now show that introverts do their best thinking when they're alone in a quiet space, and that we need that downtime away from other people and disruption. So I always encourage people, and that's what I found is a key for my success, is carving out that time and having the courage, to use your word, to say no to commitments or to social occasions or things where I just need to be away from people. One of the hardest things for me, I've done a lot of conferences over the course of my career, and conferences are, 7 in the morning till 10 at night, non-stop talkathons. And I learned that I could get sick if I did that. It just totally wears me out and zaps all of my ability to think. So when I do conferences now, I always plan for at least a couple hours where I can get away, I can be alone, I can have some quiet time, whether it's a workout or a walk. But you really have to protect whatever you need to maintain your energy in your situations, because otherwise you're really not going to be able to be helpful to anyone.
Barbara, that's such a great point, that awareness of whether you're an extrovert or introvert, because I agree with you. I think that many BAs are introverts. We know how to extrovert well.
Right.
We can talk at conferences, we talk with people, we work with our customers and our teams, so we know how to extrovert well. But our energy, to fuel our energy, we need that quiet time, that thinking time.
Yeah,
and
most people that, I'm so sorry, most people that engage me, I'm very passionate and I love, love, love people. But we need to realize that we may think an individual is an extrovert and they may not be. I have a hard time figuring out whether I'm an introvert or an extrovert, because I like, the whole dance when no one's looking. I actually don't want anyone to look, but I really enjoy my alone time for that kind of stuff. But I love people, right? And so an extroverted introvert, maybe. So being aware that it's hard sometimes to recognize whether an individual is an introvert or extrovert. So you really have to be open-minded in how you feed that individual. Don't make assumptions.
Yeah, agree. And that's a good point, to not make those assumptions. I wanted to just share something real quick for people to think about. I had a BA on one of my teams one time that was very quiet, and there would be meetings going on, and if she wasn't the facilitator, she would be not speaking up, and everybody else is talking fast and doing things, and the rest of the team felt like she wasn't engaged. And when I asked her about it later, after witnessing it a few times, she said, I need time to think. Like, I can't jump and just keep throwing things in. I need time to think things through. And I said, you need to just say that. You need to just start helping people to know that you're engaged, and just say, hey, I really like the conversation or what you guys are talking about. I need a little bit of time to think about it, and I'll get back to you. And when she started doing that, it totally changed her participation on the team and how people recognized her. And then she'd come back later and share ideas or thoughts, and people were inspired. And so I encourage you, as in your work, to make sure that you speak up about things like that you need the team to understand how you're processing or how you're doing things. Okay. So let me move on here. Barbara, could you share some advice with women to help them succeed in business analysis?
There's so many things. I think it's just been the most wonderful career. I really have to say that I'm so grateful that this career has come into its own. I think it had started with a lot of women, so I'm excited about the fact that, like, the IIBA has always been a very diverse group, and we've had lots of different opinions, and women have had a huge role in building the association and building the profession. And I think the success is really, I think, like Reydan said, that being open to learning new things, and we are always going to have opportunities to do different kinds of things. and the courage that we've been talking about. You know, every time you get assigned to a new project or you have a new opportunity, it's scary. There's always that moment, like Laura said, of insecurity where you think, I don't know if I can do this. I just started a new client a couple weeks ago, and I sat and thought, oh, I don't know if I can do this, you know. I think it's almost a good thing that we have that momentary hesitation, because it forces us to be better. It forces us to plan and prepare. I like to do a lot of imagining, like, what is this meeting going to be like? What might people say, and how might I respond? I appreciate you sharing about the woman who didn't say a lot because she has to think. I feel that way often in meetings where there's so many things going on and I can't respond right then. So I agree with you. We have to speak out and say, hey, that's great. That's interesting. I've got to think about that a bit. And I think that encourages other people to think. In our society, I mean, things are moving so fast. We don't think enough. And I think giving other people permission to take some time and think about things also helps your team be more effective, and it helps people enjoy working with you. One of the things I love about business analysts is I think we're very nice people because we have humility and we're good communicators and we enjoy people. People like to work with us, and that makes you successful, because the more people that want to work with you, the more successful you're going to be.
Yeah, really good point. And Barbara, while we're on that topic, I just saw, I have a question that came in from Anne that was put in the question box that I thought kind of ties to this a little bit. Do you have any advice for women who are changing their careers or just getting started in business analysis?
It is tricky, and it's one of the reasons I think that I really love the IIBA, is because we have a language around what business analysis is. And I would say most people, and I actually had an email similar to this morning from a woman in LinkedIn. She's been in another business area and wants to go into business analysis. And my guess is she's done lots of business analysis work over the course of her career. She just doesn't know what it is or how to name it, how to describe it, for example, on a resume or a job application. And that's where I think that the BA BAC and the language that we've built around the IIBA is a great place to start. I think people are amazed when they start reading some of the things in the BA BAC and realize, oh, I've done that. I did that lots of times. I've done that in lots of places. So you have lots of experience being analytical. And if you can couch your experience in the language of the profession, then you almost can go in and say, my title's never been a BA, but I've done this kind of work in every other job I've had. I do it in my household, I do it in my family, I do it with my church. We are people that are analytical are always analyzing. We can't stop. Sometimes it's a curse. But it's really a matter of figuring out how what you've already done is part of this profession, and then presenting yourself in a way and having that confidence to say, I know how to do this. I can learn new techniques, but fundamentally, I know how to analyze, and I can do this in another setting.
Yeah, really, really good answer. I appreciate that. So that's the end of our official questions, and I want to thank you, all three of you, Laura and Reydan and Barbara. I feel empowered personally, and I hope that others on the webinar today feel empowered just hearing from you. I have some questions here that have been coming in on the panel, and I think that we still have a few minutes left that we could address some of these questions. So I'll ask the question, and I'll let you choose if you'd like to answer it. How do you deal with the expectation that you need to work harder than male counterparts, or balancing personal and professional work just to get the recognition that you deserve, and then not burn out while you're trying to do all that? Sounds like someone that really feels like they have to constantly prove themselves in their workplace. Any comments from any of the three of you?
Well, I have an interesting statement about that. It relates to what you just stated, because at this point, I still experience that. And I mean, I have how many years of experience, and I'm leading in the IIBA, and I'm sought out for mentorship, and yet still, I actually had a leader in the last few years or so that asked me, do you feel entitled? because we were having challenges. It's a new function, right? And most organizations where I live aren't familiar with business analysis. They have a hard time wrapping their heads around it. And so it requires a level of trust. Just, it's like, I can't explain to you what it's like having a kid. You just got to experience it. So just let me do it and you'll understand, I promise. And so he asked me if I felt entitled. And I was like, well, entitlement implies that I believe I deserve that respect regardless of what I've done to earn it. Right? Yeah. Now I've done my due diligence. I've performed this action in multiple organizations and had success. Yet I still find myself everywhere I go, having to prove it and having to work really hard to do it, to gain trust, to let me try. So how do you overcome that? Honestly, I think, how do you respond to that? Well, it exists. Can't change the fact that it exists. So what can you do to deal with it? Well, find small opportunities to prove it, build trust. They got to trust you. So how do you build that? Empathize, help them understand that you truly want to make a difference and just give you a chance, and find something small to show it. That's the only way I've been able to overcome it. And working harder as a mom, honestly, that is what it is. And I'm a mom first, period. So as a mom, if that comes up, that takes precedence. And the fact that I produce value and I do the work and I work really hard and I'm smart about it should compensate for the fact that I have these other responsibilities. Right?
Yeah, and Jody, I would just add that I think people, and it's not just women, but it is a problem that women do sometimes have to prove themselves in a different way. But I also think it's about setting limits and sticking to your limits. It's okay to say, I'm not going to get that done today, because you shouldn't stay up all night long to do something that is an unrealistic expectation. And I think when you set limits, people respect that about you. I think we've all seen and worked with women who tend to give, and never stop. And if you behave that way, you're just going to keep being treated that way. So you have to have the self-respect to say no sometimes, that's not reasonable, and I'm not going to do that. But then when can I do it? Set the expectations of what you can do. But don't be afraid to set those limits and be honest about that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a problem that we as women have, right? We have in some ways contributed to the challenge that we have.
Right.
We're such pleasers. We want to band-aid everyone's wounds. We want to help everybody. We want to nurture everybody. And so we put ourselves last. Yeah. And then people begin to expect that. We've given permission for the behavior that exists. Yeah. And I think that it's important that my husband is, when I come home, if I haven't stood up for myself in a situation, or I'm dealing with that inequality or whatnot, and I come home and I tell him the story and I happen to cave in the moment, I get to listen to it at home. So I don't want to have that conversation at home. That's one of the things that's helped me have a lot more courage. And it's interesting, the response when you stand up for yourself. And honestly, those places that don't hear that, don't respect that, don't understand that, maybe they don't deserve you.
That's true. And it can be a scary thing as well.
Yeah, and that's where it gets scary, right? You have to be willing to take the risk to stand up.
Yeah,
I agree with you completely.
Right, and did I hear you speak up?
Yes, I just one small addition. I totally agree, and also what Barbara said is totally true, to say no when it's necessary, and maybe for providing instant feedback to the surroundings for the problem that we are actually dealing with. So just take the person and try to tell what you are going through, and also just say that I'm open to all the feedback you can provide me, and I can stand myself there, and I speak up for the justification that I can provide. I don't mean that we need to justify ourselves or defend ourselves, but maybe it will give us a space to just break this bias and provide the original truth that we are just experiencing at that moment.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Reydan. I appreciate you. There's another question here I'd like to share. How can you be assertive without being considered aggressive?
That's a hard one. That's a hard one. I don't know the answer to that, because I think there's been plenty of times when I've come across more aggressive than assertive. I think we just have to keep working on trying to. I think usually you come across aggressive, again, like we've been talking about, when you have some insecurity or you're not as confident, and so it's all about trying to be open and honest. I think Reydan brings up a good point. You can always ask for feedback, and see if you can get some positive support. But that's a hard one for women. It's not fair. That's one thing I think that we really struggle with. I watch the leaders of the world who are women, and they are constantly accused of things that a man would never be accused of. You're mean. She's mean to her employees. Give me a break. It's not fair. We just have to continue to try to smile as we're telling people that they need to do something that they don't want to do.
No, that's, I would like to respond to that also, if you wouldn't mind. I was specifically told, Laura, your level of intelligence with your honesty and assertiveness as a woman is off-putting. So I had an opportunity, and I was like, first of all, that's not okay, because we can be being assertive, and it's all up to that individual on the other side of the table how they perceive that. As a woman, I'm probably just being assertive, as long as I'm not overly emotional, as long as I'm using calm language. I'm being honest and I'm being direct. That other individual, if they're insecure, they're going to perceive that as aggressiveness, but it's not, right? So it's a really hard question to answer, because it's all in the eye of the beholder and that individual receiving it. Now, when I've been accused of being aggressive, I've been known to say, well, what does aggressive mean? And what does assertive mean? Now let's look at the difference between those and evaluate the behavior I'm exhibiting in this moment right here. I'm calm, I'm intelligent, I'm honest. I believe you might be interpreting that as threatening, so you're interpreting it as aggressive, right? I'm honest with them. I very politely, and usually at that point when I'm willing to do that, I've built a relationship. So how do you deal with the difference, right? How do you be assertive without being aggressive? Have a good relationship with the person you're talking to, so they understand where you're coming from. As soon as they realize that you don't have an ulterior motive, you're just trying to do the best thing for the group. You can be honest with them because you've built a relationship. You can be assertive, honest, and direct. And when they're responding negatively, I usually have a relationship where I say, okay, I think that's making you uncomfortable. Let's talk about that. Why? Why is that uncomfortable for you? Right? Am I coming strong from your perspective? I just have a conversation about it, because usually they're like, eventually like, okay, I'm just really uncomfortable right now and I'm making it your fault. Okay, well, we can deal with that, right? Now that we've had a conversation, we can move forward.
Yeah, Laura, I think that's really a good point, because there's times where I felt in that situation a certain way and been like, okay, wait a minute, now I got to check myself out here. And am I feeling this way or being too assertive because I feel insecure? And I need to practice some self-awareness and check myself out. And yeah, exactly. And there's another thing too, that with the whole thing, even with us as women, feeling like we constantly have to prove ourselves, and we end up in this reactive mode. So we're just reacting, and it's kind of chaotic because we constantly react. Yes, I'll get that done. Yes, I'll get that done. And we don't say no. We don't time box things. We don't say, yeah, I can get that to you tomorrow. And then when they see the quality of work that we deliver, it kind of changes things. But, that's self-awareness to kind of look at ourselves and say, what do I need to do to shift here from reactive to proactive, from, if it's assertive and aggressive, what do I need to do to shift? And then look even for someone that we trust that's in our space and say, can you share with me if you see my behavior start to appear too aggressive, because we may not be self-aware of what we're doing, and it's always valuable to have that space. Right.
I do want to say one thing about that.
Yeah.
We're dealing with that and we're coming across aggressive. It's usually because we're emotionally engaged as opposed to objective. So if you do have to have that conversation, most of us as women are very uncomfortable with conflict and conversations around conflict. There's a book called Crucial Conversations, and it gives you a nice little framework that allows you to objectively approach the challenge and give that person, before you pass judgment or before you state, I don't want to use the word accuse, but before you bring up what's not okay, get them to speak their piece. And often when you use crucial conversations, that other person on the other end of that discussion, they, without necessarily realizing it, they bring up their own part in it and what's driving their emotional response to you. So Crucial Conversations was extremely helpful with me having those difficult conversations about inequality, lack of respect, things like that.
Yeah, sounds good. So we have just a couple more minutes. There's a question here that I've heard asked a lot, and wanted to ask if any of the three of you can share with us on this as well. What's the best way to find a mentor if you can't find one within your organization? Any suggestions?
Like I say, I got a note this morning from a woman, and I will probably stay in touch with her. It's just, she, you know, we don't know each other. She just sent me a note. I actually don't know what city she lives in. But I think there's so much opportunity now for networking online that if you find someone that looks interesting, just ask them, you know, and it may not be that we're going to spend hours and hours together, but as Laura said, you can have lots of mentors. And so I would reach people, and I think it's helpful to have a mentor who's not in your company. I mean, they're good inside the company, but they're also good outside. And again, I'd like to, you know, advocate for the IIBA because there's a whole bunch of people that belong there who are interested in helping with business analysis improvement. So don't be shy to just ask, and you know.
Anyone else want to answer that? So,
Yes,
oh, go ahead.
Totally agree that there are online opportunities much more than ever, and maybe there can be some networking opportunities in the events. You can just go there and listen to the leaders, the drivers of the conversation, and just ask for the help or for the to be the mentee. Maybe yes, there won't be so much hours or anything like that, but maybe even you get something in a sentence, it will be helpful for you for your way. And yes, the online opportunities and the events and the chapters, IIBA chapters, can be also utilized for this, I think.
The other thing, Jody, that we didn't say about mentors is my experience is being a mentor, I learn as much as I think the mentee does. So you might feel like you're asking someone to do something that's a burden to them, but it's not. Right now, for example, I have a sort of a mentor-mentor relationship with the woman who's the president of our chapter in South Carolina, the Palmetto State. We're helping each other. We both have a lot of experience and we're helping each other. So it's a benefit to both people. Don't feel like you're burdening someone by asking them for that.
Yeah, and Barbara, I think that's a great point. And even if you ask someone, and if they don't have time, or ask them if there's anyone that they suggest for you with disability. I've also, throughout my life, have had different mentors by thinking about people within my life at different times that had certain positive influences. So, you know, there was a point in time where I had a professor in college who just impacted me so much. And 10 or 12 years after that time, when she was retired, I actually reached out to her and asked her if she would be interested in mentoring. And she was so excited about it at that time. And I actually mentored with her for some years until she passed. And I grew so much from that. So, you know, if you think about people that you've worked with in the past, or if you've gone to a chapter meeting or gone to You know, take some time and sit down and write down some of those names of people who have influenced you in the past or in different environments. It may not even be in your same industry, but you know, to think about like that circle of influence and the people who have been a part of your life. Okay, so we have reached 1 o'clock. I want to thank you, Laura and Barbara and Reydan. It was so great to hear from you today. And IIBA, I want to thank you, Mariah and Terry, for hosting and the polls. And Anne has captured the other questions that have come through, and I'm sure we'll see some blogs coming out in the near future. And to all of you, I thank you for celebrating International Women's Day with us. And I encourage you to empower each other and continue to celebrate this day. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jody.